Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another quick developer blog entry, and this one is all about the Valentiones Day event that has since passed, and this is kind of like a post-mortem. It's called Blue and Yellow, Blue and Yellow, Blue and Yellow, and it's talking about what would have happened if everybody in the world hadn't chose for Astrid. So specifically, the terminology they use is, quote, "We had hoped for a fierce clash of blue, red and yellow, but one individual shone beyond the rest, and all worlds ended up being dyed red. Astrid received an overwhelming number of votes from her adoring fans, granting her a clear victory." So yes, everybody in the world, so every single data center, every server on every data center for Japanese, for European and American, all voted unanimously for Astrid and the color red to win. So they say they're surprised. Are we surprised? When you look at this, there are a few factors to take into consideration. Firstly, some people were just handing in the quest regardless because it was a fully dyeable outfit. They didn't really care, right? There was no locked color to that, which is how we want it to be. Okay, so there were no implications directly for choosing whichever reward you wanted. So then we have the second point of Astrid was actually just outside the gate, as you come to it, just outside to the right next to the gate, and Bert and Rodegolt were actually a little bit further away, especially with Rodegolt, who was actually a fair distance away on the other side. So you have to say that, you know, the majority of the people who don't really care because it's a completely dyeable outfit, they just want it, they will just turn in the quest, or at least pick up the quest of the closest person. There is some logic to that, and obviously not everybody will want to actually read any of these quests. They'll be doing it on their alts, for example. Those alt votes actually count toward this as well. So you could just imagine people running through this, pick up the first quest that you see, hand it in, oh look, Astrid wins. That's my theory. The other theory that people are going with is that some people, and I did see this a little bit, whether or not this is actually, you know, gauged any kind of sway in the results. Some people were trying to boycott the entire thing due to the gender lock between the two outfits. And essentially people were, you know, voting Astrid just to make the map red at the end of this, to kind of show that lack of flexibility, that lack of equality, which Square Enix themselves, as they, you know, somebody who would say this is saying, are locking these things behind gender, and they're not too happy with this. You have to remember that the wedding outfits have just been made multi-gender. They were supposed to be making things less gender specific in the future, but we have events like this where you have, you know, quite cool looking outfits that actually would be equipable on both of those genders in the game, why they cannot, based on presumably cultural differences and other factors to wage into that. Regardless of what you think on that, there is a small portion of people, at least to my knowledge, that did actively attempt to do that. Whether it had any sway over anything is another question entirely, because I think the majority of people were just turning it into the closest NPC, and that's simply what it came down to. But that's just, again, my theory. There's lots of factors to take into consideration, and then there are obviously people who read the quest who were like, well, Astrid doesn't have a very good storyline, so I'm going to go and hand it into Rodegolt or Bert. At the end of the day, how many people actually bothered? And then you have, obviously, there is the gender difference between Astrid being a small girl who actually is related to the whole storyline, and then we have a character called Bert, who is, well, he's Bert, and Rodegolt. So there's also that as well. But to say that they're surprised, I'm surprised that they're surprised from this, personally. They do say, though, what was the exact quote? It's then said on this developer blog, "But hold on to your gaily caps. I can hear your fingertips ferociously typing from beyond the rift." And then it said, "I wanted Rodegolt to win. I wanted to see the town doused in blue. I voted for Bert and I love yellow. Please let me see the yellow decor." And then they say, here's what they would look like in both the blue and yellow. Now they do show a bit of a quest as well, because obviously this is the other part of this. We cannot see the blue or the yellow quest line. That's by design, because everybody voted for Astrid. There isn't anywhere in the game you can actually see these. So they first look at Rodegolt and they say, during the quest, adventurers head over to the Conjurers Guild to meet up with the client. While thoroughly explaining the situation to Guildmaster Sumiyan, Sylphie appears. The Guildmaster's apprentice proceeds to give us all a comprehensive lecture on the importance of personal hygiene and the need for a strong fashion sense. Presumably thwarted by the young girl, Rodegalt reveals it all to be simply part of the plan, and the mediation session was never to be carried out in the first place. Rodegalt admits he would rather see the pendulum in motion and let fate carry out the rest. I guess you could say Rodegalt really knows how to plan ahead, and that was the blue quest line. And the yellow quest line, and there's the arena, by the way, dressed in all that yellow, if you wanted to see that. And Bert's quest line was adventurers meet up with a client at the Carpenters Guild. He's not overly thrilled to take up the task of woodworking, but Bert eagerly manages to convince him otherwise, and the requester joins the guild. Upon entering, we're greeted by the Guildmaster, Beatin. Astonished, Beatin asks Bert if he is joking. Why on earth would you want the Carpenters Guild to entertain warriors at woodworking? The client hesitantly tells Beatin he is quite serious about joining the guild to better understand LOVE. When? And there's two images. What's that you say? Looking to understand lumber? And the other picture says, could it truly be? Have I misjudged you all these years? Here I thought you a thick-headed warrior, when in fact you are a sensitive soul, a kindred spirit who marvels at the majesty of oak, revels in the resilience of rosewood. And then the devblog says, Gods forfend, Beatin is at it again. He's definitely misheard our client's word of love for lumber. At the request of Beatin, the client is forced into the forest to meticulously memorize all tree types and their locations found in the 12's wood. Man, woman, wood. In matters of the heart, I dare say the difference is immaterial, said Bert. And there we go. So those are the other two quest lines if you were interested. Obviously, they're not showing all of the quest dialogue or letting you see this stuff. It's interesting to me that they put this as a developer blog post in the first place. I think a lot of people are going to be having their own opinions on that completely. Like, what was the point in voting, some people might say, if you're going to post the others on a website? And then there are people who say, well, you're not actually showing the full quest, actual rewards for those other things. What was the point in that in the first place? It's an interesting situation. Obviously, there are no real implications from the voting system this time around. It just goes to show that this sort of event with the voting system has to be thought out a little bit more in the future. A lot of people have been saying, well, why didn't they just have the rewards in the later stage? That way you could base your vote based on the storyline at the time, because you weren't initially getting a reward. And I would personally agree with that. When I first saw this event unveiled, on that Lodestone page so long ago, I thought they were going with this two-stage sort of system where you had the first stage at this certain date and time where you could vote for who you liked on that particular day, and you wouldn't get a reward until later on, like we had with the final ending of that on a next week, for example. What really happened is we just turned in our stuff to the closest vendor, we got our reward, and then some people didn't log in again to see the results because they knew it was going to be quite disappointing, or they weren't enthused about it anymore because there were other things happening in the game. And some people just simply don't want to have to be locked down to certain dates to log in. So you have to try and think this through for the future. If you're going to have something like this, you need to incentivize both ends of it, but you also have to make it so that you have a fair assumption and balance between those particular votes, because most people will just go on their alts and hand this in to Astrid deliberately because it's the closest. It's just as simple as that. These people exist. I am probably one of them. When it comes to playing an alt, I would just turn it into the closest NPC. I know, I'm terrible, but it's not something that really concerns me on that particular character, so to speak. So yeah, there's a lot to take into consideration. What did you vote for, and were you happy is the question. But also, the main question for the comment section I want you guys to chip into is, what would you have done differently? Would you have preferred it to be a two-stage event on separate dates where you get the reward on the later stage? Or do you think that they did this the right way, and this is actually a really good representation of a democratic election, which is obviously what this is mimicking? Let me know below. Thank you kindly for watching. If you want to go and read through this yourself, all the links will be in the description of this video as usual. I look forward to reading through your comments, and I'll see you all next time.